Connie McQuaid and you're watching Racergirl television. Today we're going to do some cooking. Recently I had a dinner party where I invited everyone to bring over their favorite salad, and no less than 80% of the salads that were brought to my house were quinoa. And that's not really surprising since quinoa is quite healthy and is easy to make, and it does make a really great salad. But somebody described their salad as to die for. Now, this is going to be a public service announcement to all you triathletes out there. Quinoa is not to die for. Quinoa, if it's prepared improperly, i.e. it's not rinsed, it's overcooked, it's burnt, it's undercooked, any of those things is basically below prison food in its natural state. On a scale of 0 to die for, quinoa starts at about a 2. And then if it's prepared really well, it might move its way up to a 5, where bacon is a 7, and 10 is probably a 30-year Barolo, New House chocolate from Belgium, any 100-point wine at all. And a 0 is probably most of the cuisine from the UK, tree bark, and old moldy things. And we're going to use red quinoa just to be different. And like I said, this itself could easily, on its own, basically barely clear the prison food mark. But if you add all sorts of yummy things to it, it can turn into something quite tasty, and it is outstandingly healthy. So, and it is gluten-free, and I know you triathletes out there are all into the gluten-free thing. So, shall we? You're gonna need some white wine, some butternut squash, some onion, some basil, some Swiss chard, some vegetable bouillon, and some quinoa. You can choose red or whatever quinoa you like. The first thing you're going to want to do in this recipe is take care of roasting the squash. But what you're going to do is first you're going to peel it, and then you're going to take all the seeds out, and then you're going to slice it up, slice it in half, and then just cut it into these little half moons. Okay, so you're going to take your squash and you're just going to pour it, you're going to throw it in a pan, and you are going to toss it in olive oil, and then you're going to put it in the oven and cook it until it's very, very soft. As long as it doesn't caramelize and burn in the oven, you're fine. It's gonna, the more mushy, the better. So have at it. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're going to slice the onion. So what you want to do is take your onion. This is a sweet onion. You can use red or whatever kind you like. Slice it in half. Cut the stem end off, not the root end. Peel it so that you get all that outer bark off your onion, and then you can, with the root end on, you can then slice it in this direction and then the other direction to have it nicely diced, or you can do what I'm doing, which is just do long slices. Keeping the root end on will allow you to have the onion stay together and makes it easier to slice. So there you go, root end. Onion is finished. So we're going to cook these onions, and you want to just make sure they don't burn. So as I mentioned, you're going to want to rinse your quinoa. So basically just take it and put it in some sort of sieve or strainer to run it under cold water. This is a mix of 3 cups of vegetable stock and 2 cups of quinoa. I'm now going to add 1 cup of white wine to this pan, just so that I can get the goodness off the bottom of this pan. Now this whole pan goes into that pan. We're heating the quinoa, onions, broth, and white wine to boiling. Then we're going to turn it down to a simmer and cover it. Butternut squash, ready to go. We're going to want to take our Swiss chard and give it a good solid wash as well. Okay, so now our quinoa is ready. We're going to add the chard to the pot. So as you can see, the Swiss chard will totally melt down in the pot. So what looks like an insane amount will reduce to a reasonable amount. So after you have the Swiss chard incorporated in the pot and you've got it on medium-low, then you're going to add all of your butternut squash to the pot as well. And you'll want to add a nice bunch of chopped fresh basil. And I would add a little bit of salt at this point and some pepper just to taste. And then mix this all together until everything's sort of warmed. The Swiss chard is cooked to tender at minimum. Some people only like their chard when it's actually quite soft. So at this point you can make this dish according to how you prefer to eat it. You could quit and say this is edible and delicious and I'm out, especially if you're a vegan. But if you're not a vegan and you actually want to up the deliciousness of this meal, I would then choose to add some grana parmesan. You could add something like walnuts or some cannellini beans or some chickpeas, something like that, to increase a bit of the protein content and make it a bit heavier and more filling, although this is quite filling, especially with the squash in it. I chose to keep this as a side dish because we're actually going to take this and kick it up a notch. We made double the amount that we need, and now we're going to make it something even more delicious. So you're going to take a lump of the quinoa, like a handful, like a nice goopy handful like this. You're going to add a bit of smoked cheese. You're going to stick that right in there. Maybe a sprig of basil, and here's my favorite, is some frozen peas. Just stick them in there like that. Now you're going to form this into a nice ball around all that stuff and make it a nice, goopy, wet, messy, like meatball shape. You can use quinoa flour and cornflakes to keep it gluten-free, and you don't even actually have to use the egg. You could just roll it in cornflakes if you like. I'm going to do a proper nice little shell on the outside, which means I'm going to roll it in whatever kind of flour, mixed with salt and pepper, so like this. I'm going to roll it in flour, mixed with salt and pepper. I'm going to take my ball and I'm going to roll it in some egg. I'm going to then roll it finally in the crumbs. I'm using panko breadcrumbs right now, like Japanese style breadcrumbs. Easily cornflakes, whatever you want to do. I'm less concerned with the gluten-free aspect, so it just depends on what's right for you. So you take this thing that's breaded and then you're going to squish it down, make it into like a hamburger patty. Right, on both sides. There you go. Tasty goodness, right? So you just want to cook this patty until you have a nice golden crust on both sides. And it's cooked all the way through, because you want all that goodness that's in the middle to actually be heated all the way through. So here you go. Here's a way to make a number 2 on the delicious scale, about a 6 or 7. And these are 2 different side dishes you could choose. I would add some grilled fish or some chicken or a piece of meat and maybe a tossed vegetable salad to this, just to up the protein content and add a few more veggies to your dinner. But it could look pretty fancy. So, bon appetit. Thanks for watching Racergirl Television. See you next time. Subscribe to my channel.